This is a discussion of garage kit busts and figures, and this time we're talking about Jeff Yeager's Quasimoto.
Yeager has done a phenomenal job of capturing Charles Laughton's likeness from the 1939 RKO classic. The face is full of sorrow, and the base references Notre Dame and its gargoyles and bell tower.
I'm not a man. I'm not a beast. I'm about as shapeless as the man in the moon.
When you're about to paint any traditionally molded garage kit, whether a bust or a figure, you have to clean it and you have to prime it. Now, this has already been cleaned. I used this isopropyl alcohol to get rid of all the mold release that was on the resin casting, so that's been done. Now it's time to prime. The kit has now been primed, but as you can see, it's been primed in two different colors, and there's a specific reason for that. I prefer to use a darker color when I'm painting something like a stone base. That way, I make things much easier on myself when I'm trying to achieve shadows. The darker primer allows me to maintain shadow. It allows me to maintain dark creases or seams between the bricks. When I apply the lighter colors on top, I'll maintain those darker separations between the bricks. I'll maintain those shadows, and it just makes the whole job of painting the base that much easier. That same principle applies to the bust or figure itself, especially when you're dealing with lighter skinned characters. In this case, Quasimoto spends a lot of his time inside Notre Dame Cathedral. He also goes outside occasionally, but he has light skin. By priming it in rust, when I apply lighter skin colors on top, I'll be able to maintain shadows around the eyes and the ears, at the neck, under the nose, and it really makes the job of painting the character that much easier. With the kit now properly primed, it's time to add some color. And even if you're using airbrush ready paint, it is important to make sure that the paint is properly thinned and properly stirred. And I like to use this little centrifuge here to stir up the paint. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why I prime kits of humans in a rust color is to help me achieve shadow when I'm spraying in especially a light colored flesh. Now you do that by spraying the paint downward at about a 45-degree angle. You can alter the angle slightly, you'll get a different effect, you'll cover up more of the area, but always try to maintain some of that shadow in the crucial areas like around the eyes, the ears, under the chin, etc. So here we have the results of the first coat of a very pale flesh, and I did use a very pale flesh, as you can see here. The reason why I chose a pale flesh is because I wanted the skin to be very, very light. I also wanted the rust to come through, and as I mentioned earlier, you can see some of the shadow here that I've maintained in the cheeks, because I do want some ruddiness in the cheeks, in the eyes, in the creases, even under the chin. You can see some of the redness there. That's going to be maintained. Now, other coats of skin color are going to go on top. Some of that may be pushed back a little bit, but it is still going to be there. And later on, when we apply washes and we do some spot coloring, as you'll see later on, a lot of that will still be maintained, and it will really add dimension to the skin. And that's what we're looking for. So now it's time to break up that pale skin color that we have. And what we're going to do is spatter some flesh wash on top. Everybody has little spots on their skin, whether it's freckles or blood vessels or what have you. So that's what we're going to do now. We're just going to break up the skin. I've reduced the air pressure on my compressor to about 3 to 5 psi. I also have an airflow valve, control valve on my airbrush. So I've choked off the air supply. And what you do when you combine both of those is you get little spatters, just like that, little freckles. And that's what we're going to do all over the bus now. So here we go. Sometimes I get that sweet spot on the compressor where I can just hold down the trigger and I get the spatter exactly as I want it. But more often than not, I have to rock the trigger back and forth, and that's okay. So long as I get the effect that I'm looking for, that's fine. So here's Quasimoto in all his speckled glory, and yeah, he does look like he has maybe a case of the measles or the chicken pox, but that's really all going to be knocked back when we do the later layers of skin tones and washes. They're going to be applied to this kit, and then we do some spot coloring using a wet palette, as we'll see later. But the idea is really just to break up the skin. Some of these spots may be a little big, even for my liking, but I'm not worried about that because I can reduce the size of these later on when I go back over the kit with a brush. We are going to do some more airbrushing. We are going to do some washes, and then we are going to apply paint speckled with a paint brush. And I can reduce the size of the spots that I don't like. But by and large, this is the technique to help break up the skin and give it a more realistic look. And now it is time to apply the washes. I use a blue, a yellow, and a red. The blue will help deaden the skin. The yellow and the red will warm it back up. And it may seem a little odd to deaden it and then warm it back up, but it really does add dimension to the skin. So the formula that I've come up with over years of trial and error is very simple. 1 drop of paint to 6 drops of water and a little bit of soap thrown in for good measure. The soap will help break up the surface tension of the water and will really help it get into all the nooks and crannies on the kit. And then when you're sponging away some of the wash that we're applying now, you'll see that the wash will remain in the areas where we want it to remain and will be removed from the areas where we don't want it to stay. All right, Quasimoto is ready for the first layer, so we're going to use the blue. Blue will stain very quickly, so we're going to apply this really quickly, and we're going to dab it off really quickly. So I'm just going to go rapidly over the entire kit. Now the kit has been sealed. The other layers that we painted in earlier, the pale flesh and the flesh wash spattering that went on, those colors we want to preserve. And so the kit was sealed prior to me applying this blue wash. And as you can see, I'm going relatively quickly. I'm just making sure that it gets into all the areas I want it to get into. I've only mixed up a small amount of the wash, and I'm getting it everywhere I want it to be. I've already got my damp sponge ready. I also have a Q-tip standing by so that I can remove paint from areas I don't want it. And I'm just sponging it off very quickly. And as you can see, it's tinting the skin. As I remove this paint, the skin that was there, that very pale flesh that was there, now has a very slight blue tint to it. It really is a deader color, a flatter color now. And as you can see, some of the paint is in these crevices. I don't want it to stay there, so I am going to remove it. I don't want to have to deal with blue on top of flesh later on. So I'm going to remove all of that, get it out of his ears, from behind his ears. And we're going to do exactly the same thing as we're doing now with blue. We're going to do the exact same thing using yellow and using red. And once we apply the red, you'll see a remarkable difference in how this kit looks. It will really start to come to life. So I'm not too concerned about the blue on the lips. That will be dealt with later. I'm also not too concerned about the blue here. It's a male character. He will have a beard line, and blue is a fantastic color to use when it comes to a beard line. It really does accentuate that 5 o'clock shadow. A lot of people might use a gray or a black. I actually prefer blue. I think it gives a very realistic tone. And again, I'm not too concerned about the blue black back here at the neck. We are going to be applying other colors later on, and that will be pushed back. So there we have it. That is the first wash of blue. Washes to come now are yellow and red. The three washes have now been applied, the blue, the yellow, and the red. And while the result may look a little odd right now, remember that these colors are going to be pushed under the top layer of the skin. So we're going to be misting a transparent flesh color on top of that to push those colors below and make everything look a little bit more natural. And following that, we're going to be using a wet palette to apply thin washes and some spot coloring to give the face more life, a more realistic appearance. And it really is just a question of misting. We want to maintain some of the color that we had previously. Now, the last part of this process involves using a wet palette. I find this is an indispensable tool. It does two things. It keeps your paint wet and it allows for easy blending on the palette itself. Now, the colors that I'm using are the transparent flesh that I used previously, a flesh wash, magenta, which works wonders when you're trying to achieve a human-looking skin. I also use an orange. Both of these colors, the magenta and the orange, are transparent colors. So again, if you don't have transparent, just get magenta and orange and thin them down. I also use a scar. This is a blood red color. And white, in case I need to lighten things up. I'll just take a little bit of the flesh, mix it up over here, add some water to it. I'll take a little bit of the flesh wash, darken it slightly. You'll see a big change when I add in the magenta, very pink. Just a little bit of the orange, and the orange, as you can see, will start to turn it a little bit more yellow, a little bit of the blood. Now we're starting to see things happen. A little bit more of the flesh. And as you add colors, you can designate different parts of your wet palette for different shades. So down here, I can have a lighter skin color. Up here, slightly darker. I can make it redder by blending in. And what we're going to do now is apply washes and spot colors to the bust. So now we're going to apply our first wash, and I've chosen a color that is a little bit darker than what is on the bust. So I'm first going to apply that into some of the creases. See how that looks, see whether I like it. And it's blending in a little too seamlessly. I need a little bit more contrast, so I'll add a darker color of the flesh wash. And now I'm starting to get a little bit more shadow in those creases, just like I'm looking for. And this is a process that is going to take some time. I'm just going to deepen some of those creases. I'm adding more shadow where maybe some of the flesh wash that I applied or some of the flesh color that I sprayed on earlier has maybe taken away some of the definition. So I'm putting some of the definition back in. Here maybe I'd like a little redder color under the eyes. Just blending on the palette. You see how easy it is to blend. I've got a nice pink color here. Might even try doing the lips at this stage. I don't normally do the lips this early, but the lips are really just a question of using your original flesh color and then making it slightly redder, slightly browner. And you can see already a difference in the way the bust is looking. So I'll continue applying these washes and these spot colors, and we'll come back when it's done. After applying some of the washes and the spot colors, this is the version of the bust that I've come up with. I do like the way the skin looks. Now, it might not look good to you, but don't forget, we still have to put in the hair, put in the clothing, and once the hair and the clothing are in, you'll get a better appreciation for how the skin looks. But right now, I do like the preliminary result. Once the hair and the shirt and the cloak goes in, I'll have a better opportunity to judge the skin, and then I can adjust. But right now, I like the result. And here we have the final result. This is what you get after you've applied a series of washes, some spattering technique, and some stippling with the variety of colors that I showed on the wet palette. Now, this is a project that took me about 2 weeks to complete. It really just is a question of how much time and effort you're willing to put into it. But the techniques that I've shown will result in the accurate skin tones that I've painted here. So good luck with your future projects, and thanks for watching.